All right. Howdy, beauty gals and pals. It's me, Tiffany, and as long as everything is going well technologically wise, we should be good. We should be live. Today we are back for another Waves of Captain Verity Jones pirate tale. So I'm just gonna quickly make sure all these things are the way that I need it to be, so that we're not having any sort of complications. Let's see. All right, come on. I need this program to work for me. Hold on. We're going to pull some stuff back up. As long as it behaves, then we'll be happy. There we go. Now that's going. Okay. Hey, we're good. Got every pieces put together. I see we have some people watching. Hi, guys. Welcome here. Just so you know, this is the 5th chapter in the Ways of Captain Verity Jones Choose Your Own Adventure story that we have been doing. So if you don't want to be spoiled about what has happened so far, you might want to go back to the playlist that we have on this channel for this series. I think there's technically 3 videos so far. I have the chapters 1 and 2 in one video, and then 3 and 4 separately. And now we're moving into chapter 5. Before we jump into the actual story, I want to get some feedback from you guys. Hi, Laura. Good to see you in the chat. I have some questions. I want to make sure that we're all, kind of on the same page, that we're getting all that we can out of this. So, I want to know, how are you guys enjoying the story process so far? Do you like having just the 2 choices at the end? Each chapter we've gone through, I've had 2 separate basic voting choices. Do you wish there was more things for you to vote on? I was kind of contemplating the concept of maybe doing like a mid-month additional vote. So where we have the end of the chapter, we'd have like our 2, and then maybe a couple other things that as I write, I could post on like my Facebook and Instagram accounts for you guys to come and vote and say that you would like to add some thoughts in that way. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the chat, or leave a comment if you're coming in after the video being live. Also, the question is, do you like having these as live streams, or would you prefer that I pre-recorded them and we did this as a premiere? So when you do a YouTube premiere, that's basically where you have the live chat going on as you're watching the video, but it's still a pre-recorded video. So that means that I could jump into the chat with you guys and we could talk back and forth while it's going on. Or do you prefer this live as we go methodology? So let me know which way you like that. And then finally, I want to ask, what do you think of the time frame? Are you liking it being on the last Saturday of each month at 7:45 p.m.? Is that a time that many of you are able to get on? Or are you finding that you're having to come back and watch this at a later time? If you would rather have a different time that works better for you, let me know in the chat and I'll see what best lines up both with my schedule and with everybody else's. Okay, now to catch back up with what happened last in chapter 4, in case you missed it, and if you don't mind spoilers. So far, what is taking place? Jax has lost the map. It went missing. He tried to see if Kellyeth, this mysterious benefactor who he believes is actually a gilly, which is the term for a derogatory term for mermaids in the world of Fahe. He believes that Kellyeth has stolen this map from him because it is illegal for humans to have a well plotted out course of the ocean. And so he assumes that this must be some kind of conspiracy. Oh, and also to note, gillies are able to, as they desire, take on a form with legs or go back to their natural form with fins. So that's why Kelly is able to be on the boat, in case you're confused about that. So Jax goes looking. He has to go into the quartermaster's cabin area, because that's where Kelly is staying at this time being, and he discovers that instead of the map is a moonstone, which has caused issues in the past so far. So Jax grabs the moonstone, he takes it out to the deck, trying to show that this thing that this Kelly shouldn't have is with him, and somehow Jax activates it, which brings forth what we see here as the Great Octoid of Mustarsis, who then basically kind of attacks the ship and is currently pulling the boat behind it like a giant bath toy. So that's where we are right now. The whole crew is trying to survive this craziness and try to see what's going to happen. The votes that you guys voted on last time was, should we attack the octopus and try to get it to let it go, or should we see and wait it out and see where the beast takes us? And the other one was, should Jax talk about Kellyeth in front of the entire crew, or should he go into the cabin with the captain and have a private meeting about what's going down? Okay. Now, just so you know, I'm about to go into chapter 5 now. I will go through it as I will read it without stopping. If you want to have comments, if you have theories or questions, you can put them in the comment section. I won't be able to pause and answer them until I'm done reading through. But then after that, we can go through and say what we need to say. All right, so let us begin with chapter 5. I want you inspecting your leads every 5 minutes when topside. If for any reason you must free yourself from your tether, you will have another crew member present. We cannot stop to fish you out if you go overboard. Do not let it come to that. Shurik's voice battled around the whistling wind and the consistent crash of the waves around them. 20 minutes had already passed since the octoids first took hold. The Sannleika now jettisoned behind the monster, which showed no signs of slowing. The crew had to lower all sails for fear of straining the mast. What was worse was the progression wasn't a smooth, steady pace either. While an enormous sea monster, the octoid of Mustarsis was still an octopus, meaning it swam with more of an undulating pattern. The violent back and forth made losing one's footing almost a guarantee. Jax's fingers clenched onto the rope tied to his waist for the 6th time in the past minute. He inspected the knot as his legs struggled to steady him in place. Shurik leaned back and forth in perfect rhythm of the octoid's strides as he finished his latest bout of instructions. Jax gripped at the side railing just in time to stop the tangling of his feet. What he wouldn't give to have just an ounce of Shurik's ability. Then again, it wouldn't have been even an issue had he not released this death beast in the first place. Jax's stomach wound into even tighter knots. Captain was going to kick him off the Sannleika. He just knew it. If they were to survive, that was. Looking around, Jax caught sight of the captain signaling to Shurik from the doorway of her cabin. Shurik nodded his reply, then carefully stomped his way toward Jax. Shoulder sensing, Jax fought to swallow around the lump in his throat. Before he could prepare himself, Shurik's firm grip was clenched on his right shoulder, his other hand undoing the knotted rope around Jax's waist. The quartermaster practically dragged the cabin boy along with him. Part of Jax was grateful as he found he fell 80% less as long as the man held him. Pulling him inside the captain's quarters, Jax felt his body shrivel under guilt. Captain Verity's things lay thrown about the room, a few shards of broken pottery here and there. Only a handful of her books still stood on their shelves. Papers and charts practically hid the floor. The captain's furniture, on the other hand, hadn't budged an inch thanks to her foresight in bolting it down. Except for the chairs, that was. But those had been mostly righted again. Jax just realized he had yet to inspect the damage below deck. He shuddered to think that the glares the crew would rightfully throw his way. Bracing themselves around the captain's desk stood Kellyeth, Simmons, and the captain herself. Gentlemen, Verity nodded to Shurik and Jax as the quartermaster brought them to the edge of the desk. Jax waited for his tongue lashing, eyes glued to the toes of his boot. Now that we have finally been able to get a hold of things again, and since our giant friend doesn't appear to be stopping anytime soon... The captain paused for a second. Jax, we need to know exactly what you were thinking when the creature stared you down. Jax lifted his head, seeing all eyes were on him. His mouth gaped open. I'm not sure.
Think very hard, my son. Did any location pass through your thoughts at that time, no matter how brief?
Kellyeth leaned in, the intensity of his voice heightened by the striking sharpness of his eyes. Jax chewed on the edge of his thumb. He had screwed something else up, hadn't he? Watching their impatient stares, he swore he must have shrunk at least 3 feet. He hadn't told the monster anything, but why would he? He was too busy trying to not fall off the side of the boat. All Jax wanted was them to be safely docked at the Hollows, to leave this mess behind and... Wait! The Hollows! I was thinking about making it to our next port. The tension seemed to lift from everyone all at once.
You have our heading then, Captain Jones.
Kellyeth nodded to her. Jax's eyebrows scrunched together. But how? You've linked yourself to a calling type of moonstone, Jax. Verity replied. That moonstone, as we've seen, activates its connection to the late Mustarsa's great octoid.
There are many types of moonstones, my son,
Kellyeth added.
Your activation could just have easily brought us to the bottom of a whirlpool. The calling kind often links you to some method to whisk you off to another destination.
Kellyeth looked at the group as a whole.
Mustarsa must have trained his giant pet through the stone's mind link to bring him and any vessel with him to wherever he wished. Smitt, what were you doing in my quarters?
Shurk spoke up beside him.
That was how you discovered the moonstone, was it not?
Jax swallowed hard, his mouth going dry as his eyes peeked up towards Kellyeth. I thought Mr. Kellyeth had stolen the map from me.
The map's gone missing?
Simmons leaned in. Jax winced, nodding his affirmation. A long sigh released from the captain as she massaged her forehead. She tossed a look to Kellyeth, who tipped his head back to her in return. Looking back to Jax, her eyes held a seriousness that made his palms sweat. Jax, you are to stop snooping after Mr. Kellyeth. Do you understand? This is a direct order from your captain. Mr. Kellyeth is a Neoshnari up for the merfolk. Neoshnari? Jax tilted his head. It's an elite or higher, well, let's just say spy, for the noble classes. You are a Gilly, then! Jax blurted out, making Kellyeth wince slightly.
Probably shouldn't call him that to his face, kid.
Shurk whispered to him over his shoulder. Jax grimaced apologetically. As I was saying, Verity broke back in, Mr. Kellyeth is fully aware of who we are and what we do. Our ability to skirt under watchful eyes is exactly why he hired us. We made an arrangement which serves him and grants us clemency of all crimes.
Crimes committed up until our arrangement is concluded,
Kellyeth added. Right. Verity smirked slightly. Mr. Kellyeth has no interest in our map and frankly only looked into the moonstone because I asked him to. Jax pressed his lips into a line. Not trusting Kellyeth to not attempt 2 birds with 1 stone, but also knowing he was in no position to question the captain.
Human men and young boys around your age have been disappearing, Jax.
Kellyeth's severe tone grasped the cabin boy's attention.
My employers suspect that the Hollows is where these souls are being bartered off. Our intel has proven that merfolk are involved in these illegal practices, which the Great Accords of Paskathan cannot abide by. Interesting, you only get involved when your own kind is connected. Heaven forbid when it's a normal slavery case that you step in,
Simmons muttered just loud enough off to the side.
Captain, is your entire crew insubordinate?
Kellyeth asked, cutting his eyes to Simmons.
I'm not part of her crew, but her humble guest, sir.
Simmons smiled ruefully. A most welcome guest at that, Verity added with a proud smile. One which I wouldn't mind adding to our numbers someday, if he'd ever agree to it. Jack suppressed a laugh at how annoyed Kellyeth was by the captain's reply. The thing is, Jax, the captain continued, our only hope of unlinking you from the Mustarsa stone is by bringing you to the Barista, the head mermaid who oversees the comings and goings of the Hollows. But we don't know how entwined with the trafficking ring she might be. Aside from Eason, we in this room are the only ones going ashore. Jax opened his mouth to speak, but Verity raised a hand, silencing him.
And before you ask, no, you cannot simply stay connected to the Moonstone. It's far too risky for the whole of the Sannleika. Jax closed his mouth, shoulders slumping slightly. Aye, Captain. Simmons is your in with Arista, Mr. Kellyeth. Verity shifted focus to the giant merman. His quest of mapping the world has garnered him the reputation of the most accomplished cartographer around. Arista thrives on connecting with the finest people and things in existence. She'll have no doubt already discovered by now that Simmons is making his way to the Hollows. You will pose as his guardian and servant. Kellyeth shifted slightly as Simmons pushed back a smirk. That way, she and anyone else of influence there will more readily accept your presence. Kellyeth gave a shallow nod. Very well. Arista will likely recognize me as a Yoshinari anyhow. I suppose watchdog over a famed person of interest is the only plausible excuse. Shurik, at the speed we're now going, how long do you estimate till we reach our destination? If the creature maintains this breakneck pace, I could see us making port within 3 days. That is if it doesn't sleep. With breaks, still more than half the usual time frame. The captain let out a low whistle as Jax felt his mouth drop open. Can your ship sustain this battering, Captain Jones? Kellyeth raised an eyebrow as he took a cursory glance around. She'll manage, Verity replied curtly and cut her eyes back to Shurik. The crew will see to that. Shurik bobbed his head obediently, sensing the order. Timing out the undulations of the boat once more, the quartermaster methodically made his way back to work. Jax, the captain called out just as he turned to follow. You will remain here in my quarters until we make our destination. There is no way of knowing if you might accidentally redirect the octoid by drawing too close. Jax swallowed a disappointed sigh. Yes, Captain. Just what he needed, to be shut up in close quarters instead of getting the chance to make things right by helping out. Resigning himself to a corner, Jax stayed quiet as the captain finished her meeting. By all rights, the captain should keep him shut off. Had any other crew member made such a colossal mess of things in such a short amount of time? He was certain now that once the secret mission for the Gillies was over with, his aunt would kick him back home for good. Jax leaned back against the wall with a deep sigh. He prayed for a chance to prove himself just once before he had to say goodbye. The days wore heavy on the Sannleika crew, as the Great Octoid did very little resting in its journey. Some of the crew fought against sickness with a relentless pace, and many found themselves drained just by trying to maintain steady footing. Poor Pendleton, the carpenter, was the worse for wear, as his nerves refused to let him stop checking on the Sannleika's well-being. At this rate, Jax decided that for his own safety's sake, perhaps it had been the best choice keeping him sequestered in the captain's quarters. Jax sat up straight and paused for a moment. The ship had stopped its harsh forward and backwards push. Could this mean... Land ho! Umar's muffled voice cried just barely through the thick wooden door. Jax scrambled up to his feet, leaning slightly against a built-in bookcase. His body had started to regulate itself to the octoid's rhythm. Its sudden departure left his limbs slightly confused on how to proceed. Stumbling onward, Jax hesitated at the door. Exactly at what point was his prison sentence to be ended? Did it end automatically at their arrival? What if he stepped outside and accidentally triggered the octoid to take them somewhere else? Jax's hand stayed frozen in place, hovering just above the door handles. The knob twisted beneath his lingering fingers, signaling to Jax with barely enough time to step back just as Sedona came bursting through the door. Come on, cabin boy! You won't want to miss this! Her brown eyes opened wide and shone at him excitedly. Jax moved to follow but paused again. Sedona sighed and shook her head. Reaching out, she grabbed his hand and pulled him after her. Don't worry, Captain herself told me to come get you. Now get going! Nothing beats seeing the hollows for the first time. Stepping into the sunlight, the rays warmed Jax's skin. Looking to the bow of the ship, he saw that their octopus friend must have slipped back into the waters. A few miles ahead, earthy green spires jutted out of the sea. Each column, though in close proximity with the others, stood solitary from their mates, with the waters encircling on all sides. Scanning around himself, Jax noted numerous ships anchored all within the same vicinity. The vastness of the vessels made it appear that the Sannleika had just joined in with a war fleet. The varying colors of the sails and the styles of ships stunned him.
Even more intriguing was the traffic flow of rowboats traveling between their main boats in the towering hollows. It used to be a mountain range, before the great death tides rose to the sea level. Sedona offered at Jax's right. She gripped the ship's railing and leaned into the view. You can still make out the parts of the range below the waves when you get right up to it. Is that the reason for all the rowboats? Jax studied those further off as they began to weave in their way between the peaks. Some sloops tried to sail directly in before. She rested an elbow on the rail and turned to Jax. You see its remnants right before you hit the first dock. Jax's eyebrows scrunched together as he thought for a minute. Sedona, how do so many people come in and out for the trade here? I'd assume the steep terrain would make lugging your wares extra difficult. Sedona blinked at him for a moment, suppressing a laugh. Cabin boy, has no one explained to you how the Hollows got their name? Jax shrugged, trying to appear nonplussed. Every peak you see here has been mined out, just enough of mountain rock left behind to keep them well fortified. So they're actually hollow? Jax blinked, then stared back, slack-jawed at each earthen tower. Well, more or less. Everything resides inside them. The system is massive. Even below the surface? Jax moved around to combat the bouncing of the sun from the waves. Sedona shook her head. It became too risky after one whole peak's accidentally flooded, caused it to crumble. Though some say a few private passages still exist. Studying Sedona's face as she took in every ounce of the hollows, Jax's heart twisted within. After the last few days, the whole crew was in desperate need of some shore time, but it was unwise to leave the ship unmanned in a place like this. The number of rowboats each boat was allowed to anchor within the hollows was also limited. Only so many could make it through at a time. If it hadn't been for the Moonstone, Sedona would have joined her father to help check food supplies in their market. She loved it here, and they had no idea how long it would be before they made it back. I really screwed this up for you, didn't I? Jax sighed, dropping his eyes down to his hands. Oh, please. Like you planned any of this. She chuckled half-heartedly. Her being disappointed was one thing, but to hear her try and shove it down to make him feel better... He was lower than a batch of barnacles on the hull. His head dipped down even lower as silence built up between them. Noting his pitiful posture, Sedona elbowed him playfully in the side. Buy me some ruby lips and we'll call it an even, all right, cabin boy? Jax tilted his head up. Ruby lips? It's a special sort of candy, real tart stuff. Only sold in the Hollows markets. She smiled at him. It's my favorite. I will get you a whole bag of them then. I promise. Jax smiled back. At that rate, I might even let you try one. She winked. It didn't take the small group long to pile into the large rowboat. Captain Verity positioned herself at the bow. She stood there with such commanding dignity it was hard not to be inspired by the sight. Sherrick and Easton took their places on the oars, while Jax and Simmons swished themselves between Easton's crates, some empty for new supplies, others packed tight as trading currency. Much too long-legged to cram into a seat, Kelly maintained a standing posture at the stern. Gliding through the waters, Jax bulked as he looked off to the right. A collection of what appeared to be rocks lay scattered a short distance from the base of the first mountain peak. Strewn across in varying lounging positions were none other than full-fledged merfolk. Jax had never actually seen a ghillie with their tail. He'd only ever come across their leg forms. The vibrancy of their fins and colors and the diversity therein sucked the breath from his lungs. Even from so far away, they were mesmerizing. Their rowboat drawing closer, Jax felt himself torn between feeling as if he should avert his eyes and yet not being able to look away. Each merman he saw could easily equal to Kelly's standing height, Jax calculated at first, but then he watched one flick of their tail slicing lazily through the crest of a wave, and it was clear that would most be considerably taller. Did ghillies shrink when they traded in for their legs? Jax glanced back at Kellyeth. The merman stared straight ahead, unblinking. The hairs on the back of Jax's neck stood on end, alerting him to watchful eyes. Looking back at Kellyeth's kinsmen, they all leered at the Nyoshnari, every one of them now on high alert. A flush swept over Jax's face, making sweat trickle down the back of his neck. He turned back to Kellyeth to see if the ghillie noticed the merfolk's predatory stance. Yet still, Kellyeth remained stoic. The dock was a long wooden platform which wrapped the circumference of the peak's base. A chaotic mix of people and gillies alike scurried about, some in a foul-mannered rush and others in a barely sober stumble. Men dripping in wealth darted their eyes about as rats outside their dens. Children with no shoes on their feet licked their lips each time a soul untied the strings of their own coin purse nearby. At first, Jax couldn't understand what it was about this place that mesmerized Sedona so. The opening in the mountain carved by the docks looked, sounded, and even smelled similar to the ports of Maslucan. It all appeared very nominal. That was until he stepped further inside. Never before had he seen such intricate craftsmanship. The center was cut clear, allowing the sun to float in and sparkle against the polish of the stone. A few vines from outside grew down through the opening, pairing a beautiful complement of nature's design with man-made. At least Jax assumed the hollows had been mostly human-crafted. Gillies could rarely be bothered with physical labor. A glint of light caught Jax's eye. From one edge on the opening, a slow trickle of water dripped down. Following its descent, he watched as it dropped into one of the most extravagant rain barrels he'd ever seen. In actuality, it could have easily been a giant fountain if it weren't for the way people were retrieving bucketfuls from it. A gentle pressing of hands on his back made Jax practically jump out of his skin.
Keep walking, lad, otherwise you might get trampled.
Eason chuckled and gave him a wink. Sorry. Jax shook himself and regained his place by Shurk, who stood waiting for him. Eason excused himself from the group as he spied some special items he'd been aching for at one of the food stalls along the side. The captain walked back from some location Jax had missed and stood in the center of their little grouping. I've made them aware of our arrival. I'm sure they'll call us any minute now. Before she could get the words out of her mouth, a man just inches taller than Kellyeth appeared before her.
Milady Aristo requests your audience, Captain Jones.
He bowed reverently.
She hopes you would be so kind as to offer an introduction with our traveling companion here.
He indicated to Simmons with his whole hand, careful to not be so rude as to point at him with only one finger. Jax gaped at seeing green and purple scales laid in scattered patches along the man's hands, neck, and bare chest and shoulders. Peeking an eye up at Kellyeth, it made sense to him now why their Gilly donned his bandages every day. But surely his height alone would give him away. There had to be some other reason he was missing. Verity looked to Simmons, who nodded his approval. We'd be delighted. She smiled to the Gilly guard. The merman stiffened as he surveyed the group.
Oh, I wasn't intending all of you.
His eyes lingered on Kellyeth the longest.
He is my Neoshnari, my protector on my travels.
Simmons spoke up.
Wherever I go, he shall follow.
The guard grimaced but dipped his head in acquiescence. The whole of their group was then led up a long twisting path that ran along the walls. Higher and higher they climbed, passing by numerous levels of carved-out corridors. Jax wished he had time to explore them all, but he had a sinking feeling that this trip wouldn't afford him the opportunity. Coming to a heavy wooden door, the guard rapped his knuckles against it a few times. A melodic voice came through from the other side. Enter! Stepping aside, Jax fought to keep his mouth from hanging open. Off to the left, a personal mini waterfall flowed with a small stream in the ceiling, similar to that one that was collected water in the main hall, but here the water continued to make a small river right through the very large living quarters. Gillies were known for having unnatural influence over the ocean tides. It was how they sunk the majority of the land masses of Fahe. It was also the only thing that made sense for such a water feature to exist in this place. But he could have sworn Gillies only had effect on salt water. Surely they weren't responsible for the fresh water back in the main hall. A mermaid stood from a canopy bed in the opposite corner as they all filed in. Jax's eyes bulged as he made an audible gasp. Cascading from her head and flowing in shining waves down to her waist were periwinkle locks. Her hands, arms, and face also bore a collection of scales, though hers shone an almost iridescent blue and clustered most intensely on her hands. Her eyes glistened a bright green, and her pale skin held hues of purple. Jax found himself longing to see her in her full mermaid form. He could scarcely imagine the ethereal beauty she'd flow in then. Welcome to my domain. It is a great pleasure to have you here. Even her voice floated around them like an enchanting song. Captain Jones, you must tell me how you managed such an impressive ship. My sources had you timed for at least another week at sea. Then again, you've made quite the name for yourself by circumventing expectations, haven't you?
Verity gave a deferential bow.
What fun is there in always knowing the outcome?
But thank you as always for granting our ship's passage, Lady Arista.
I do what I can to help out your poor kind.
Arista's lip puckered out as she roved pitying eyes over all of them. Whatever spell her beauty had held on Jax before instantly vanished as soon as he felt her air of superiority wafting through. Gillies always treated them as these weak, lesser beings. It was how they justified their monopolizing control over them. Few things infuriated him more. Light danced in Arista's eyes as a smile spread wide across her face.
Please tell me, is this man the Simmons O'Quinn of the O'Quinn Mapmakers Alliance?
Verity bobbed her head.
The one and the same.
Mr. O'Quinn has made it his life's goal to chart all landmasses of Fahe, post the great death tides, and has seen fit to hunker down with my crew just so he could reach those shores beyond his normal scope.
My, what a brave soul indeed!
Arista brought her fingertips to her lips and giggled. I am little more than a record keeper, milady. I must admit that my job comes down to much more tedium than adventure, I'm afraid. Simmons offered respectfully.
Oh, nonsense! Arista waved him off. You are far too humble, sir. You bed yourself beside a bunch of pirates, for goodness sake.
She chuckled as she watched Simmons dart his eyes over to the captain.
Never you mind. In my domain, all sorts are welcome, even encouraged. You do right by me, and I'll make sure my kind doesn't bother you.
Arista's eyes flicked over to Kelliath.
They know better than to come stirring up my waters.
Returning back to Simmons, she smiled brightly.
So fear not, dear Simmy. I hope I can call you that. No need to cover for the captain. I am already well aware of who she is and what sort of merchant ship she sails.
Jax bit his lower lip, forcing a straight face. At hearing the mermaid's new pet name for Simmons, his friend wouldn't dare correct her, but Jax knew he had to be seething on the inside. Simmons tipped his head down. Your generous heart is truly a rarity, Lady Arista. Arista clapped her hands together excitedly.
Oh, my dear Simmy, you simply must dine with me this evening. I have so many questions to ask you, but sadly no time right at this moment. Once I finish off some older business this afternoon, surely you could join me?
It would be an honor, Lady Arista. Simmons bowed deeply.
Wondrous! Very well then, please enjoy all that the Hollows has to offer. My men will gather you later on.
Making their way out and back to the main floor, Jax pulled Shuruk aside to question him discreetly. Whatever happened with the whole unbinding thing? Captain didn't bring it up at all. Shoot, I don't know if Arista even noticed I was in the room. Shuruk raised an eyebrow at him. Did you want her to focus on you? Jax's face twisted in disgust. Not if she talked to me the same way she did Simmons. The quartermaster clapped a hand on Jax's shoulder. It's all about timing, kid. Whenever it comes to powerful gillies like Arista, you have to watch every step. Surely she's not that dangerous. Jax scrunched his nose. She's far more cunning than you think. Don't let all that tittering up there fool you. Captain stepped into a battle of wits with her the moment she made our presence known. Jax chewed on the edge of his thumb, eyebrows knitting together as he thought for a second. So is it too dangerous to wander around then? Shuruk sighed. Yes. Jax's shoulders slumped. But you should be fine if you stay near the marketplace. Jax straightened instantly with a growing grin. Go ahead, kid. Have some fun. But don't wander too far. Jax waved his thanks to the quartermaster and jogged his way toward one of the many stalls. No better time than now to find Sedona her candy. All right, and that concludes Chapter 5, what we have so far. So this leaves us with what our choices are. What should be the name of the Octoid of Mustarsis? That's going to be our first thing that you guys get to vote on. Do you want this giant octopus beast to be named Pinkering, Kolkrabi, Scrimscully, or Maria? Alright, so any of these type of choices you can decide. You can vote in the live chat here. You can vote later on. You can leave a vote on
the event on the Facebook page, wherever you see me lift something up. These votes need to be tallied in at least by Wednesday, because that will allow me to get started on the story. I got one vote for Maria, okay? And then the second one is how Jax should proceed. So this will help weave where he will go next in the story. Will he try to find the Ruby Lips candy on his own? Or will he go to Eason to see if he can get some help from Eason to find the Ruby Lips candy? So 1, find it on his own. 2, go ask Eason for help. So again, put in your vote there. Which path do you feel Jax should go for next time? And I'm going to leave this part on the screen as I talk about a few things, just so that you guys get a chance to really see what your choices are here. The next time that we will have for putting up this live stream will be June 25th, again at 7:45 p.m. If we decide in the future that we want to change the day or the time, that next change, we'll have it set up to start in July. I see a vote for Jax trying to go find the candy on his own. Okay. So again, let me know if Saturday, the last Saturday of the month, 7:45, is that a good time frame for you to be able to get on and catch this live, or if you have other times and dates that you find it easier for you to get on. Whatever most people can connect with, that's what we'll do. Or you guys can say whether or not you would rather see this as a premiere instead. Like I said, where I record at least the story part of it ahead of time, and then with the options at the end, and then we just kind of comment back and forth in the chat live when it premieres that way. So let me know which way you want to do that. Do you like it live like this, where we can have this instant back and forth, or would you like a pre-recorded premiere setup? Also, again, let me know if you want more chances to vote on the story. I can post on my Facebook page different things that might shift where the story goes. That would happen because basically I take like almost a month to write each chapter and prepare all the images and everything for it. So if you want to see it that way, again, live chat or later on chat. If you want more chances to vote on more things, just let me know. The next gaming live stream will actually be coming this Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. I'm pushing the time up a little bit just to try to see if that gives people a little bit more chance to get on, because I know many people get off work around between 5 to 6, so get a little bit more freedom that way. And then finally, if you are enjoying this series that we're doing here, I know it's different from pretty much all the gaming stuff that is on this channel. If you come from my Facebook stuff, then you know that's much more writing based. But if you are enjoying what's going on here, please let me know. Let me know if you would like this series to continue. One of the best ways that I can see that this is actually something worth putting more and more time into is if you like, comment, and you share the video. The views, getting more views and getting more interactions from people will make me want to keep going, so I know that's worth it. The game that I will be streaming on Tuesday is going to be more of Ori and the Blind Forest. We're pretty much just kind of working our way through that series as best as possible. If there are other games that you want to see me live stream, let me know. I'm willing to try some other stuff too. But I will say that I'm going to stay away from stuff that is any kind of horror-based things. I don't manage well with those ones, but there's plenty of other types of stuff that I don't mind trying out, so you just let me know. But again, if you like what you see here, you like the stories, you like having the chance to help build a story up pretty much, I need to see a response. What about zombies? It's a little... There's some zombie things that can be not so bad. I'm not a huge fan of super goriness. Like Minecraft zombies are no big deal because there's nothing really creepy about it, and there's some other games that are more funny than they are gruesome. So I don't know. Just give me options and I'll go through there. So yes. But yeah, I like doing this series. I like having the stories and getting the music together, getting the images together, all that kind of stuff. But it does take a lot of work to put into it. So if you want me to be able to keep doing this, then I need to hear from you that you would like to see more. Okay? So again, you have your things to vote on here. So I have a vote for Maria being the name of the octopus, and for Jax going out on his own. And I hear that you want to keep the series going, and also to check out a game called Scum, a survival game. Oh, I might have to do that. I have a strong feeling I wouldn't make it very far, just knowing how I do. But it could be entertaining to see. So I'll look into that one for sure. But yeah, that's pretty much what we have so far. I don't really tend to keep these particular streams that long when it comes to the story ones. We're pretty much just focus on Jax's story. But you'll have the next Ori in the Blind Forest live stream coming Tuesday. And then there'll be another one right after that, because the idea is to try to do the first and last Tuesday of each month, so you have one that kind of butts up against it, and that's what's going to happen there. So yes, I hope you guys had fun. I hope you're enjoying yourself. We have another Call of Duty video that's going to be coming out this Monday, and then on the Friday we have a new Sea of Thieves episode that should be really entertaining, that Jasmine and I played with some new people, so it'll be good. All right, so thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all your comments, your interactions, your likes, your shares, all those things. It really makes a big difference. Appreciate you guys. Hope you're having a wonderful day and continue to have an amazing week. And I will see you at another time then. Bye, everybody.